today was have a special topic which she'll bring up. And as one of the reasons we do this is number one, really to give value. And number two, at the same time, if you want more information, then we also obviously have a class that Nichole worked really, really hard on that's online, which covers everything from A to Z, from setting your goals to running the business and everything else in between to buying and running multifamily properties. So, Nichole, it's all yours.
All right. So when we started these Teaching Tuesdays at the first of the year, we asked a lot of people some of the topics that they would like to talk about. And one of them is the one we're going to be talking about today, which is repositioning, or also known as rehabbing, when that also means rehabbing in commercial. So the first thing I want to say is this is a really big topic, and there's a lot to it, just like there would be if you were going to be doing in single family a class on rehabbing. So what I am going to touch on here, what I'm going to talk about here, is some of the basics and how multifamily commercial, how I approach that a little bit differently than I do residential. So we're just going to hit the highlights here in some of this, and then I will hope so. There isn't a lot of content. I think we've got 3-4 slides here, and then we'll open it up to questions. And if there's enough interest, we'll talk about doing some more in a webinar format or something, because there's just a lot here to cover. So the first thing I want to talk about is one of the things that's a little bit different in multifamily is that when you talk about, we say repositioning, not rehabbing. And reposition not only means changing and upgrading units, like in a rehab, it also means changing the tenant base. So it could mean that you are trying to upgrade the tenants, you're trying to change them out to a different type of tenant. Or sometimes you take over a property that's in really bad shape and you have 20 or 30%, 40% of the people who don't pay. And so you're going to try and get them out and get in residents. You're going to screen differently and get in a different type of resident, right? And frequently it means both. So if you are doing some major repositioning, some major rehabbing of units, you're frequently going to be raising the rent, which tends to change the tenants a bit. Okay, so in terms of costs, when excuse me, when we go to do a scope of work, when we go to look at what it's going to cost to reposition units in a multifamily / commercial property. Well, let's just talk about multifamily, because commercial is a little bit different yet. We kind of I break them into 3 kind of levels. The lower cost is like $2,000 a door or less. Okay, so let me talk to this idea per door. So in multifamily, we call a unit a door. But when we're talking about cost per door, it is not necessarily just saying it's just the cost that is going into an apartment. It's if I'm looking at everything that needs to be done in common areas, outside, all of those kinds of things, and put all of those costs together, including the cost to upgrade a unit. You're going to add all of those together and then divide that by the number of units. So it comes in at a cost per door. So it, just to reiterate, it doesn't mean when you see cost per door, it doesn't mean that is just the cost that has to go into the apartment or the mobile home, etc. It is the cost across everything that needs to be done, but divided by the number of doors. So 2,000 a door or less is really a fairly small amount of work. When we get into $3,000 to $7,000, that's kind of a medium. And we may handle those depending on what that includes. It will depend on how we approach this. And then the large are $7,000 or more. I know a lot of people are going to say it's $10,000 per door or more. But I tend to be a little bit more, when I get up into the $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 range, I really want to have a really good, tight scope of work and somebody to manage that work so we don't get cost overruns. So the numbers are flexible. So it could be, if something is at $6,000, but there's a lot of moving parts, I can treat that like a large. If it's $3,000, but most of it is going to be per door, it's going to be doing one or two things, then I can treat it as a low cost. Hopefully everybody's kind of following that idea. All right, so let's talk about the other thing that makes this a little bit different. So commonly used across the system are property management companies, a lot of them will tell you that they can manage rehabs and construction too. And for the most part, I haven't found that to be true. I would be not uncomfortable if they have a lot of experience in a low or low medium rehab or repositioning, right? For them to manage it. The issues, let me kind of say what I was going to say, and then I'm going to talk about commercial contractors just a minute. So the issue with a lot of typical contractors and property management companies is that the more they have fine things that need to be done, right, the more they make, because they typically make their money based on, it's a percent of the overall costs. And if you don't manage cost and the quality and time well, you end up over budget a lot. And that happens frequently. You know how that happens in residential, and it happens a lot more in commercial. So one of the things I try and do is to find a way to have somebody who's overseeing the rehab that is not directly benefiting by adding on work and time, that it doesn't increase their what they put in their pocket. Now, having said that, I will, whoops, sorry, folks. If I'm going to do some of this work and I'm going to hire a contractor, it's going to be a commercial contractor. The reason is that they're much more used to the bigger the bigger deals. They're used to working with a project plan. They're used to having bonuses and penalties associated with time. They are also generally much more experienced. They've been in business longer. They have more people on a crew. So if I'm going to use a contractor for a medium to a large kind of thing, I'm definitely going to try and find somebody who works on commercial properties. Okay. So what do I try and find? Now I have to confess here that one of my early lessons in this, it's probably been 20 years ago now, was I thought I knew what I was doing. I had done some residential rehabs and I bought a 40-unit property in Boise, Idaho, that needed a lot of upgrades. And I didn't know how to manage contractors. And I had a property management company with their bringing in their favorite contractors, and I got taken to the cleaners. And if I hadn't have had some residential property, I'd have been out, because it really was I really learned some lessons. And so some of my ways of doing business are probably biased by that early experience. And so I'm just telling you that up front. So who do I try to find to oversight, to be my, for lack of a better term, my general contractor or my project manager? I'm going to be looking for a general contractor who is getting ready to retire, who's already retired, and is just looking for a little bit of extra work. They're not running a crew, and I'm hiring them to be the project manager and to bring my project in on time, on budget, and in quality. And so they're going to oversee. There may be another contracting company that's hired to do the work, but this general contractor is going to oversee that work. That's going to be the person on the ground. And since I have a lot of properties that are quite a bit distant from me, I need somebody who can be there routinely to make sure the work is getting done. Another people I have used, but generally not for big projects, is I will find a code enforcement officer from another county who might want to make a little bit extra money. Now that's, it's generally a county that's adjacent. Or if in that state you have code enforcement that's hired by a municipality rather than a state, then I would look for somebody from another municipality who can manage the project. My favorite, and what I almost exclusively use anymore for big projects, is a PMP, a project management professional. And you can find those at the Project Management Institute, and their website is there. They come in two big flavors. They come in construction and they come in IT. Now, there are others in general, but we obviously want the construction. What PMPs basically do is that they build out an entire project plan, and it's called a work breakdown structure, a WBS. And what they are going to do is they lay out all the tasks that need to be done in kind of a Gantt chart, in a plan. And they are going to identify those things that if they aren't done on time, delays the entire project, right? Though it's called the critical path. They also know enough that they are going to back up. So if you have to get, say, a new roof, or you have to get kitchen cabinets in. That may be a better one. What takes a while to get, they're going to be able to understand how long in advance you have to order them. And they're going to put that in the project plan so that if you have a 2-month delay or 2 months until those arrive, they're going to order them 2 months in advance. And that's what they bring to this project, to what they bring to the table here, is the ability to really put a project plan together. The other thing that you do is that these people are hired not based on, they're not going to be, you're not going to hire them, they're not going to get extra money if extra things have to be done. They are typically hired to bring the job in on time, on budget, and within quality standards, which typically means, you know, passing all of the inspections, et cetera, and they get bonused if they bring all 3 in. And they are frequently penalized if things run over too much. So they're going to build a buffer in, just like most of us would, in case something happens, because something always happens. That's just, so for large projects, I almost always use a PMP. You can find them at the PMI. They frequently really are running on big commercial projects, but a lot of them that are getting started might be interested. And the other things, some of them, you know, kind of break off and try and run their own business. So you try and find those kinds of people to manage a large project. The median, you know, I'm going to go after a GC, a code enforcement person, somebody. If it gets fairly complicated, I may just have my PMP do that too. And I may be okay with property management companies doing small jobs, as long as there isn't a lot of complexity in that. Okay. I think I just talked about most of this, is that this is why I use PMPs. They have a separate contract with my company, other than the contractor who's doing the work. The PMP actually manages the contractor and the crew and all of the subs. So you don't generally need a general contractor who's going to hire all the subs. That's one of the things your PMP is going to do. All right. They generally don't have this conflict of interest where they get paid more if things are delayed. And I think we just talked about a lot of the rest of these things. So the next thing, this is where I need some input from you guys. I already said this is kind of a big topic. There's a lot to this in terms of scope of work and critical paths and building your work breakdown structure, and really trying to figure out how you do a scope of work most effectively for an apartment building, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm wondering if you're interested in a webinar on this topic. It's probably going to be at least 2 to 3 hours in length. It could be more. And is this something you'd be willing to pay something for? Because I would have to put it together. So I just want to open the lines and let people answer this kind of really. Let's take 5-6 minutes to answer that, and then we'll kind of move on to the last slide or so. Can you kind of just let me know what you think, folks? Unmute yourself and just tell me, please.
This is Corey.
Yes, it would be great.
Thanks, Corey.
I think it'll be great.
Is that you, John? Is that you, Corey, or Jonathan? Who's talking?
This is Corey.
Okay,
Yeah, I think it'd be great. Along with maybe if you have some resources on like some of the places we can get financing through in order to get the multifamilies. I don't know if that's too much to ask for, but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, that'd be great. And I wouldn't mind paying for it because I know it does take time to get things together. Thank you.
yeah. The other thing, I mean, this is an aside and it's not on this one, but James and I were just talking today earlier about maybe doing a webinar on raising private money and what the rules are as a separate one. So we're talking about doing maybe quarterly webinars because they take a fair amount to put together on various topics. So, all right, other people, could you kind of weigh in? We're talking at this point, I just want to know your interest in repositioning, in a webinar on repositioning. And if it's something we don't feel like you need, then tell me that too, please.
I thought it was great. But what Corey already said was voiced my opinion also.
Thank you, Emmett.
I'll be quick. Yes.
Thanks, Stacy.
Yep, Travis here. All for it.
Okay, great, great. All righty. So, what do you think would be, had anybody got a sense of what you think would be a reasonable cost? $49.79, something like that for a couple hour webinar? More or less?
Corey here again. 3 hours of some really good information. With us taking notes and everything, I don't have a problem paying $49 because what we could gain out of it is priceless if we put it to use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
All right.
very fair.
Emmett?
That's very fair.
Okay. All right.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, so I am going to just kind of move on. And if you have other comments about that, if you could kind of drop us an email, that would really be appreciated on this. You put your thoughts in the chat box if you don't want to be, if you'd rather just be quiet a little bit about it. So I just want to kind of let you know about then, last slide, and then we're just going to open it up for questions. Is that if you want to know more about multifamily in general, then we have about a 2-hour webinar that's at bit.ly Passive Wealth Webinar. If you have questions about this or anything else, you can email us at support@passivecashflowforlife.com. You can also go to passivecashflowforlife.com and learn more about the class we do. It's actually 36 modules. It's about 60 hours, and it covers everything from setting your goals, finding your markets, buying properties, raising money, managing properties, and managing your business. The last thing I just want to let you know is that every one of these Teaching Tuesdays, by Thursday, the replay of this is generally up on our YouTube channel. And it's in there with other Teaching Tuesdays we've done. So there's a big playlist there if you're interested in other topics, right? So I would invite you to come to our Teaching Tuesdays. The next 2 weeks, it's kind of a twofer. We are going to be talking about things related to raising private money, but I'm focusing more on what the rules for raising private money are via the Securities and Exchange Commission, so you don't get in trouble with them for these kinds of things. And then later in the summer, we're going to do a couple on actually the types of ways you can raise money and how you might go about it. All right, so at this point, let me just open it up for any questions you may have on repositioning or anything else. James, is there any questions there in the chat that we need to answer?
No, not right now.
Okay. Questions?
Well, Corey here.
Okay, Corey, great.
I didn't wa-
Somebody will talk to me.
I didn't know if I should go on or just be quiet, but I live in South Bend, Indiana. There's a building here that I've been eyeing for a while now. I do have two residential properties now. But this commercial building that I've been eyeing it used to be an old college. It's 3 floors. And what I wanted to do was do some major construction, make the top 2 levels, each corner an apartment building. Apartments on each corner of the first and the third and second floor. And maybe do maybe 1 apartment or 2 apartments on the first floor, but have a seating area downstairs as well. I don't know if that's profitable as far as like construction goes. I know cost of the building and all that, but what do you think about something like that? Or should it be more just an apartment place, multifamily that's already up, and just pretty much just renovate that?
If you have the construction experience, the rehab experience, then I would say, you kind of look to see how much it's going to cost to do the work, and then figure out what the rents would be, and do the numbers to calculate if it makes sense, if you could make money doing that, because you're going to have to get a construction loan, probably followed by a longer term, less expensive loan. So it would really depend on what you needed to do and what the rents are in the area and how much it's going to cost. If you don't have rehab experience, if you don't have a lot of rehab experience, I would say that may not be the best first project.
Okay.
Because there's so much to those things. Not least of which is some of the permitting and kind of all of that stuff you have to go through.
Yeah.
So that would be kind of my take. But if you can get it for you can do the analysis and get it for a good price, and then sell the letter of intent or your deal to somebody else who has more construction experience, that might work.
Okay.
All righty. Other questions? I'd really love it if people would talk to me. I always feel like, how do you find a code enforcement officer? That's a good question.
Hi, Nicole. This is Marissa. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I have a question. I actually am best friends with the code enforcer, so that's not my question. That's not my question. But my question is for a small multi-family building, 5 to 50 units. Would you hire a general contractor and a PMP, or one or the other? And if so, which one?
Okay. So the first thing I would say is who I'm going to want is dependent on how much the overthing is going to cost. If I'm going to be at $7,000 to $10,000 a unit,
Okay.
So if I'm at, $200,000 or $300,000 or $400,000, I'm going with a PMP. So I'm, just because so most deals, let me see if I can say it this way, most construction, at least in my experience, overruns by 10% or so, 5 to 10%.
Okay.
It's just kind of the nature of the things, why we put that buffer in, right?
Okay.
So if you have a $400,000 job and it overruns by 10%, that's $40,000. That's a pretty big overrun. So if I have a big project, I want to be able to I want better control of the project. And in my experience, a lot of general contractors don't have the experience in managing those kinds of things. Now, a good commercial contractor probably does have that experience. So what I typically do, let me see, I may not have been clear. So if I'm going to hire one of these, let me come back to one of these questions here. Okay. So if I am going to be hiring for a larger job, a general contractor who's going to retire, a code enforcement officer, a PMP, right? Any of those people to oversight my project, I still have to have contractors and other people to do the work. These people aren't doing the work. They are managing the project. So they're a project manager.
Okay.
So if I'm doing a medium to large kind of deal, and I'm going to probably using contractors, I would rather use a commercial contractor because they have more experience with bigger jobs. They're used to working with project managers, et cetera, et cetera. Did that answer your question?
Okay. So for a larger one, you would use a PMP.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe
Yeah.
for a smaller one, maybe the general contractor and the code enforcer.
Yeah, you could do that. Either or. It depends on what you can find, right?
Okay. And the PMP is there to help make sure that we don't go over budget. The general
Yeah.
contractor is just there to make sure that everything is getting completed.
Okay, let me, in that, who do I try and find on those 3 bullets down there on this slide? I'm going after one of the 3, not all
Okay.
3.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so those things on those 3 bullets those are the people who are going to manage and oversight my project.
Okay.
Their job isn't to do the work. Their job is to oversight it and to maybe hire other contractors and people in the different trades to do different things, right?
Okay.
But I'm hiring them separately. And their only job is the managing the project. So I'm going to preferentially use a PMP when I have a big project.
Okay.
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 I'm going to use code enforcement general contractor if it's a medium. I mean, I can use a PMP in any of these, but if I have a big project, that's where I want to go.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Now, before you go away, Marissa, there was a question in the chat of how do you find code enforcement people? You want to try and answer that I can't see who actually asked that question. The SC.
Stacy.
I don't know how you find one. I literally just happen to be best friends with one. We've been best friends since we were 10. And he's a code enforcer, I think, for either Baltimore City or Baltimore County. I'm not sure which one. That's the only reason, that's the only way I know one.
So what I would then try and do is if it's municipality to municipality, like there's code enforcement people in Baltimore City, but there are code enforcement people in the county too. right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I would call up the some of these different code offices and ask to talk to one of the code enforcement people and just sort of say, you know, I'm kind of interested, this is what I'm kind of looking for, and I want to make sure my job is done right.
Okay.
And I'm at a bit of a difference, at a bit of a distance. So I'm looking for somebody who can oversight my project to make sure it's being done correctly, it's being done on time, etc. Is that something you might be interested in doing as an extra job? Is it or do you know somebody who might be interested in that? You may have to make more than one call, but you know, that's kind of how I would approach it. All right, other questions? Anybody out there, please?
I'm still learning, and with the information that you're putting out is enough for me to digest without having the questions that haven't already been answered. So that's why I'm quiet.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
I
appreciate
can ask a
that.
question.
Okay,
Travis here. So we're talking repositioning, right?
yes,
Which means that we're in the process of purchasing, or we have purchased, right?
yes.
Which means that where are the funds coming from exactly? Is that purchase part of the capital raise, or is that from like a capital partner or
Yeah,
operating
good. That's a good
reserves?
question. So, if I have a lot of work to do, so there isn't one answer. It's one of these, it depends. If I have a big job to do, that is going to take a while, I will try and raise enough money to get myself started on that, to get some of the units done, to get some of the critical life safety kinds of stuff done, bring that in with the raise. And then I'm always going to try and get a few apartments done at the same time, right? In that first raise. And then I am going to use, once I get those units done and rented at the higher rate, I'm going to use that money to fund the rest of the rehab. So if I was doing 10 units, and I'm getting an increase in, let's say, those 10 units after expenses are bringing in $5,000 a month, $3,000 a month, then I am going to sock that away and I'm going to reinvest that to continue to do the work. So what I typically do is bring money in to do some of it if it's a big rehab, big repositioning, and then use some of the cash flow in the out years to continue, because nothing says all of this has to be done in 1 year, right? So I'm
So
part
this is
of my
basically
business. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, this is where the underwriting gets really important, and the pro forma years.
It does. You're right. It does. And part of what I am looking at when I'm doing the underwriting is the more money I have to bring in that first year, the worse my cash on cash return is going to be. It's going to decrease my cash on cash return and therefore my return to investors. And there is a good chance that not all of that money gets spent in the first 6 months to a year. And so that money is sitting there not working for me. So when I build out a business plan, I'm going to be building it out to say, what is the work that needs to be done? And how am I going to accomplish that? So I have a, this is just kind of a back in 19, I bought a big just before COVID hit too. God. I bought a 20 property portfolio that were all REOs and short sales in the West. So there wasn't one of them that was working well, right? So, but one of the properties in Sheridan, Wyoming had about 100 units, not quite, but close. And there were code violations from one side to the other. And the previous owner got into a physical altercation with the code enforcement officer, which has made it challenging ever since, even though it's a different owner. But some of the stuff was life safety issues that needed to be taken care of right away. Those you have to bring money in to get taken care of, right? And then the rest of it, a lot of those units hadn't been taken care of. I mean, they were livable, but they were pretty dingy. And so we built in to do some of the units every year. And so basically, I'm doing all of the units over 5 years. And I have 7 years to refinance those and to get a new loan on that unit. But when I was building out the project, the business plan, I really had to kind of lay out what I needed to do right away, what could wait for year 2, year 3. And I did that with my PMP because it was over $1 million of work that needed to be done on that property. And so we built that project plan out over 5 years. COVID happened, and so it's going to be 6 years. But did that kind of answer that question, Travis?
Yeah, that was a great question. Great answer. If I could ask a tangential question,
Sure.
how did you find those properties? Did you have like a team that does all your deal sourcing?
No, actually, this one was one of the banks called me.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
I had done a kind of a short sale deal in Oregon a few years before that with a bank that turned out really well. And so they just called me wanting to know. The other thing is that some of these properties are pretty small. Like there's 3 properties in Cody, Wyoming that I think are 6 units, 8 units, and 14 units or something like that. And so there's a lot of people that don't want those kinds of things. And the bank was really looking to try and sell them all together. And so, I like small markets. I always have liked small markets because I come from a small market. So
if we can double click on that right there, if you don't mind, for these smaller properties that you have, I assume you have a property manager in the area.
So this one is set up a little bit differently because we have a regional property management, a property management company that I own with my partner. And we have a regional manager out of Billings, Montana. But for leasing and showing properties and things on the ground, we're actually using a realtor in town there to do those things. And that realtor works with the regional manager.
Great. It's a good insight. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions?
So,
Well,
sorry,
go
just a
ahead,
quick
please.
one. Apart from the bank calling you, I think was that a one-off, or do you have any other website that you use to look for deals yourself?
Most of the time I'm using brokers, but
Okay.
I bought enough properties that I have pretty good relations with a lot of brokers.
Okay.
But right now, letters to kind of, I would be focusing more on small properties if I was getting started right now, like for 3 to 10 units, somewhere in that range.
Mhm.
And I would be sending letters. I'd be getting a list. I'd be sending letters. I'd be talking to a lot of realtors in the markets I was interested in to see what's there. You know, property management companies know who owns a lot of this stuff. I'd be checking with them to see if they know of anybody who might be wanting to sell, those kinds of things.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I
You
appreciate it.
betcha. I think we have time for one more question, and then I'm going to turn this over to my erstwhile partners, Jane and Sharon and James. So any other questions?
Yeah, this is Corey. I have one more question. Are
Okay.
you familiar? Are you familiar with the 203K loan?
No, I really am not. What are they?
Well, 203K loan is a loan that you can buy a single family home, and it's also a construction loan as well. So
Okay,
it's
okay.
two in one.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that loan per se, but basically what you're talking about is a bridge loan type of thing.
Oh, okay, right. So what I don't know what a bridge loan is, but so the question is, since the 203K loan is for single family, is there a loan out there for multifamily that we could buy the property and use it for a construction loan as well?
Yeah, yes, and those are actually called bridge loans or conduit loans.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so conduit loans are Wall Street loans. They're generally for bigger deals. Bridge loans, all a bridge loan is it's kind of a two-for loan. The first part is a construction loan that is higher interest rate. And then as soon as the work is done, it automatically moves over into a different kind of loan, the lower rate that is, you know, like a more standard loan. So if you're talking to brokers and other people, there's a lot of companies out there that do bridge loans. A lot of banks do bridge loans. A lot of, if there's a small property, I would bet you that there are savings and loans and other things that do small bridge loans too. It's just it's just a kind of a two-phase loan. The first being construction, and the second is moving out of the construction into a longer-term loan. You can look them up. There are a lot of lenders out there that do bridge loans.
Okay, thank you.
You betcha. All right, if no more questions, then I'm going to stop
I
sharing.
have a question.
Okay, Jonathan, please go on.
Thank you very much for all this great information. You know, and I heard you speaking about, you know, when you start, best to start small. So I was thinking about, what are your thoughts in terms of finding funding, for example, 4 to 10 unit, how different it is to find funding for a 50 plus apartment building? Is there a big difference in terms of, other than the amount that you're looking for, but is there a difference in terms of looking and searching for a funding between
So there's
small and medium size multifamily?
There's a couple pieces to that. One is that if you're talking about raising money from private lenders or from doing a syndication, so you're raising capital, those are basically the same, and you need to start that now. You need to start building relationships with people. Tell them what you're doing, start building trust. Smaller properties, you can have smaller loans from private investors. Bank loans, so surprisingly enough, that the loans from lenders are much easier at 5 million and above. There are some that do 1 million to 5, and it's hard to find loans under 1 million from banks, from lenders. That's why I say try and find credit unions and savings and loans and things like that, because they're more likely, or small local banks with local charters. And you're going to have to find those when you find the property, because those banks tend to be around local to where the property is going to be. Is you're going to find the best luck. When we're talking private money, it's probably a little easier to find money for the smaller purchases because you don't need the big chunks of change. If you're trying to raise $2 million, you don't want people bringing in, $25,000, $50,000, because you're going to have too many people in those loans. And so you are looking for people who can come in at, 100, 250, 1 million, something like that. And those take time to build those relationships. Those high net worth people typically have money managers or people who look at deals for them and make advice. And so any way you start raising money, you need to start building those relationships now. And I'm going to let James jump in here because he's pretty good at building those relationships. And then that's kind of the last question. And I think we'll turn it over to Sharon and Jane.
So we're actually almost completely out of time. So I think the most important thing, or maybe 2 or 3 things that are most important when you're talking to people that might possibly want to invest with you. As Nichole stated, start early. A lot of people say, if you find a good deal, the money will come. I've talked to a couple of people that have done that, and they said it's the most stressful thing they've ever done in their life, and they would never, ever do it again. Because when you are looking for the money and you don't have those relationships established, one, you might run across some ECC rules, but the other thing is that all of a sudden you need the money, and people can tell that you need the money. And when they see someone in need, they're thinking, well, that's such a good deal. Why does he need me? Why does he have an easy time, kind of raising the money? So I would start relationships early. And you don't have to do this big 30-minute presentation for people. What I tell people is start talking to people and just let them know, hey, I'm actually looking into getting into multifamily real estate, and just wanted to let you know it's kind of fun. I'm having a good time. I'm working with a couple of people out of the Maryland area, and that's it. If they want to ask you questions, great.